Let's all get seated down. Come on in. Can you hear me back there? Am I working? Is it hot?
This is awesome.
God bless America. Good morning, good morning, good morning. I'm Rob McClellan. I'm one of the members of the team at Meristem. I look after the go-to-market stuff. I've been working with Mitch Evans since 1991, off and on. We have a really good section here for the next 3 hours. We're going to actually sit here, a little housekeeping. We're going to sit here for the next pretty much couple 3 hours. And we're in this room the whole time before we go to lunch. Also, just want to draw your attention, over by registration, there's a couple other marketing, an area that we want to make sure you go through. Verdova will have a team member over there. You'll learn a lot about that. Our friends at Blueprint Pattern Ag are over there. We have some other folks we'd like you to run through at a break. So this next, let me stand over here. Wow, that's a lot of light. We're going to have 3 sections, a lot of panels. We're going to have a section here on regenerative ag and why it matters to the U.S. farmer. Then we're going to have a section on high-yield soybean. Then we're going to have a section on equipment technology. So my job is to facilitate and get the best thinking out of these smart guys on this stage in the next 70 minutes. So how many definitions of regenerative ag can we come up with? My favorite is government baloney that probably will never happen. I've heard that one. I've heard that one. How many people in here have gotten a check from a carbon program? I know there's 1, 2, 3, 4. How many people have looked at it? How many people have investigated? Everybody? Well, regenerative ag for us, as Mitch said, and Gertzy, and my friend Juicy, and basically said, for us, it's more bushels for less cost per bushel. And I think I don't know who said this, Kelly Garrett maybe, or I don't remember where I learned it, but can anybody ever tell me about a business that got more efficient that didn't make more money? So our position is, regardless of where you and your family or your business wants to go in this space, if we can help people make more bushels for less cost per bushel, we'll probably do some good work. So that's where we stand on this. So we're sitting here in the state of Wisconsin. The state of Wisconsin, how much money do you think you can make or get from the government on cover crops? $40? More than 40? How much you guys think? It's about $60, 50 to 60. And if you do a little bit more, it can go up to 80. So we're excited about ways that we can work with programs that already exist. So we're going to cover 3 topics today. We're going to talk about EQIP a little bit, carbon insets and offsets. There'll be more tomorrow with Josh on his panel. Josh McLean will be up here tomorrow. We're going to spend a lot of time on 45Z and the Inflation Reduction Act. That's one we're going to spend some time on. So the discussion guide, we want you to learn from these folks. We want you to really, at the end of the day, after this few minutes, we hope you can go out and have some different conversations. Maybe ask some different questions. What are you doing on your farm to take out a tillage pass? Is that something you think you could do? What has been your situation with cover crops? We think excavator AMS can help with cover crops and help those cover crops turn into nutrients faster. So after this next few minutes, we hope you can learn a lot from these guys, gain a different perspective, and go from there. So Mitch and several folks that we work with, we spent about a year, and personally I tried to spend a year to decide not to be involved in this topic. My goal was to leave this alone. And ever since we got through it and said, I think we have to lean in, because if this hits and guys can get 50, 60, 80 bucks an acre, we better be a part of it. So our position, whether it's government-driven or market-driven or driven by the combination of both, where we sit is we believe there will be $150, more than $100 per acre if you stack the programs together, available for farmers who are willing to do practices and keep track of the data. But it all comes down to keeping track of data at some point. So we'll get into that. So let's meet our panelists. Everybody knows Mitch. Hello, Mitch. Peter, I think we've met Peter. We've already done that one. So let's meet Clay. Clay, tell us about yourself.
Yes.
Is Clay hot? I mean,
So good morning, Clay Stallmeyer with Verdova. Live around the Bloomington, Decatur, Illinois area. Happy to have this opportunity to join Meristem. Mitch and Rob, appreciate the warm welcome. You guys are off to a great start, and you know, our role at Verdova, we'll get into it in the future, but farmer-founded, farmer-led data company.
well, we're sure glad you came. Let's meet Trevin.
Hello, everybody. Trevin Kennedy from Marquis Energy. Yeah, it's pronounced Marquis. It's a family name. It's a family-owned company in Hennepin, Illinois. So maybe some of you delivered corn to us, maybe some of you don't, but hoping just to be an open book for you guys today and give you some transparency of what we see coming up in the future for carbon intensity and in the ethanol space.
Very good.
So Rob, I just want to,
Yeah.
Travis's operation buys over 100 million, Trevin's business buys over 100 million bushels of corn. His business is on the cutting edge of 45Z. So please lean on him with all the questions you have about 45Z, because he's the company that's going to be working the tax credits back to you in the form of cash. And Clay, Verdova, Rob said it, data. Clay's company captures the data that allows Trevin to work 45Z money back to you.
There's a lot of terms that are confusing, and they're used in a lot of different ways. So I'm going to ask these guys to get us grounded on a few terms. And what we really want to do is to make sure this is really interactive. I know it's a bigger group than we're used to. It's grown a lot. But please, as we get through this, you got a question, let's get it out there. But some key terms. Clay, what's EQIP? What's it about?
Yeah, EQIP's been around for a while. It varies across operations. By no means am I expert. Our family's actually participated in EQIP. My wife put in a monoslope feedlot, and on Central Illinois, it's fairly flat, black, and square, not much room for cattle, but EQIP's a wonderful way for producers who are willing and able and nimble to make decisions on how they want to affect their operation to bring something of value to their own footprint and help get that money available to access and to build something that falls into environmental quality in the terms of how the government wants to share those funds.
Who in here's done anything with EQIP? Right here? Several. I know our soil warrior friends, they love to use that program. We know a lot of, how many people use EQIP or CSP for cover crops? I know there's some folks in Nebraska using the program for nitrogen stabilizers, so pretty understood. Our belief is that a lot of people don't lean into it. Sometimes it doesn't cover all the economics, or it's just a pain in the butt. So we'll address that as we go forward. Trevin, what's sustainable? What is SAF, and why should we care?
Yeah, SAF is sustainable aviation fuel. Like you said from the get-go of this, what's the definition of sustainability? The way this is defined is about carbon intensity. It's not just about, well, is it made from corn ethanol or is it made from soybean oil? It's about the carbon intensity meeting a certain threshold to be defined as sustainable. And obviously, as most of us live in this general world, like we understand that there's a lot of flights, and this could be a huge opportunity. That right now we're at a 10% blend for our gasoline. SAF would be a drop-in fuel, so it's not like the gasoline world. We've got ethanol as one product, and gasoline is a separate product. Sustainable aviation fuel would essentially be the same grade or spec as Jet A, so it would be the same fuel. So you could be higher blends with really no argument to be made about, well, is it going to change the engine or performance of the engine or anything like that? So there's opportunities there for higher blends as well.
Sure. I know on Delta, you can pick, do you want a carbon-free flight? I haven't picked that yet, but I'm thinking about it. Thank you on that. So I'll stay with you, Trevin. Yeah. What is define 45Z and why it matters?
Yeah, so 45Z, as was kind of alluded to, it's a section of the Inflation Reduction Act. The Inflation Reduction Act was signed into law in 2022, so it is in law. It will take an act of Congress to undo it. a question we often get is, well, what would a change in administration do? It could change how the outcome looks, but as of now, it's going to happen, right? And it's going to start in January 1st of 2025 and go through December 31st of 2027. So we've got 3 calendar years, but really kind of affecting 4 crop years, right? Because in 2025, we're going to grind this year's corn harvested in 2024, and we're probably going to use some of the 2027 crop toward the tail end of 2027. So that's kind of the scope that we're looking at now. There's a lot of groups pushing to extend it and make it go on for beyond those 3 years. But as of now, that's what's set for. And so what it is, it's a tax credit to the biofuel producer, and again, it comes down to the carbon intensity. So they're saying that you have to be a 50 or lower. 50 is kilograms of kilograms of CO2 equivalency per MMBTU of ethanol. Let's just call it 50, right? You got to be 50 or lower.
So Trevin,
Yep.
To be an ethanol plant and to be able to offer 45Z tax credits to farmer,
Yep.
the ethanol plant you're selling to has to have a CI score of under 50.
That's right. And then from each point down you go, it's a rateable return. So the better your score is, the better you could stand to gain from the tax credits.
And that 5.5 cents, it's not cash?
Not for us. It's a tax credit. We would have to either use up our tax liability or go to the marketplace and sell that tax credit to somebody else who wants to take that. So there's probably a haircut taken there, right? It's not going to be dollar for dollar that we receive when we sell that tax credit, but we still think there's going to be value, and I think it's a good thing that this is happening in that regard, because in this case, the ethanol plant is dealing with the IRS, not the farmer, right? The farmer's not getting a tax credit. You're getting cash from the ethanol plant.
So what you just said was, this 45Z money, you get a 5.5 cent bushel tax credit every time you go up a point on your score.
That's how the.
But that's a tax credit.
That's a tax credit.
So to turn that into cash, you got to sell the tax credit to somebody.
That's right.
And nobody's going to give you par value for that, are they? If you're going to buy a tax credit, you want a tax credit.
That's right.
So that 5.5 cents just got something lower, right?
Yeah. Call it a 10% haircut, so maybe now it's 5 or whatever. But yeah, so there's things along the way that in order to monetize that back to the farmer, there's going to be some haircuts taken along the way. But in any regard, that 5-cent value it's going to be impactful. And then it's up to the ethanol plant to really kind of decide, okay, now what do we do with that 5 cents, right? Is that something that we can take to our farmers, and can we split that value with them? That's Marquis's stance, is to do that, but it's really going to come down to the ethanol plant to decide what's it going to take, or how is it going to work with the growers in their area to collaborate and share the value.
I just heard you say you might give half of that
Yep.
retained 5 cents back to the farmer. What are you going to do? Do you got insurance and stuff you got to buy? Why are you keeping 2.5 cents?
Yeah, so like I said, you got to be below 50, right? Most of the ethanol industry sitting here today is like a 54, 55, or just a little bit above 50. And it takes a pretty large investment to drop below that. Now, there are some that maybe already have technology in place that will be below that. But most ethanol plants will have to invest a fair amount to drop below that. And so it's going to take, like I said, a fair amount of dollars. And I think in order for the ethanol plant to kind of recoup some of that, in order for us to give the farmers a marketplace, that's why Marquis is sitting here saying, whatever value we get, the farmer's going to get half of that.
Now, who's accountable for the paperwork and the grain being audited? Because if the auditing firm for the IRS ever finds out that 5.5 cent tax credit was fraud, who's liable for that, the farmer or the ethanol plant?
Right now, it's the ethanol plant, right? We're getting the tax credit. We're the ones that have to own up to, we received it. We have to kind of back that. So in that regard, I do feel the farmer is protected. Now, what we're waiting on is further guidance from the Treasury. So right, the 45Z is being run by the Treasury, not USDA. Granted, they are consulting the USDA on how to implement this with growers, but the ethanol producer has to face the Treasury. And so that's where we're coming back to having a group like Verdova that can work with the grower to aggregate the data, to prepare the farmer for the ethanol plant to have a leg to stand on, right? Because when we sign up a farmer and say, Peter Farms is at 20, we're going to have something that can verify that. And rather than having the farmer have to gather his paperwork and stand up for himself in this case, I think having a group like Verdova that already has it together, already has a CI score backed by data.
So this isn't going to be like the non-GMO line. You just pull in, dump it, and clip a premium. To get the 45Z money, your bushels are going to have to be certified.
That's right.
The reason they have to be certified is because all this taxpayer money, the government's going to audit the ethanol company. And if the ethanol company gets caught in that audit misrepresenting that tax credit, the farmer's not liable, the ethanol company's liable. That's the reason when you start marketing 45Z grain into ethanol plants, your data has to be certified or they're not going to be able to buy it. And the reason they're going to be such stricklers on the certification is because if the government finds out it's not certified, it's their ass.
Yep.
Thank you for the. Make it work. Thank you.
First question that comes to mind among the hundreds. You keep talking about the score the ethanol company has.
Yep.
Is it a company or a plant? And how do you know that? You call your local ethanol plant and say, what's your score? Are you participating in 45Z?
Yeah, great question. The way that again, we're waiting for guidance on how this really plays out, but right now it's kind of being indicated that each plant will have its own CI score because each plant might be built a little differently. And so the volume from each kind of location will probably have its own CI score. So yeah, I think it's going to come down to the ethanol plant having to do a little bit of background work in the GREET model. The GREET, it's an Argonne National Lab model. That's kind of the tool being used. That's kind of the rule book right now to how do we get a CI score, go to the GREET model, input our plant data here for what we use for natural gas and electricity and diesel and everything like that. And same thing for the farmer. That really the GREET model is why farmers right now have a stake in this, is because the Treasury has said to use GREET, and GREET has some areas or fields within that model where farmers can enter nitrogen application, yield, cover crops, those types of things that can give the farmer a CI score. And so we're optimistic that we feel our score can relate to the farmer and we can show that value.
Wonderful.
Yeah, Eric, I think Eric's approach or question was spot on. Go have the conversation with your local ethanol plant because they're all at different phases. There's 200 ethanol plants in the U.S. Clay, how many of them will be certified to buy 45Z?
It's a great question. Trevin may have a little insight on that, but not everybody's created equal in this space, that's for sure.
Maybe 10%, Trevin?
It's, like I said, the majority is a little bit above. No doubt there will be plants below. How many is the $1 million question right now, and how competitive this space will be for.
So locally, something to think about. Locally, some of you may get approached to bury carbon on your farm. The reason the ethanol company wants to bury carbon on your farm is to improve their CI score. Because if they bury the carbon, their carbon index score goes down. So when you hear farmers saying, should I let the ethanol company bury carbon under my ground a mile under where I'm going to farm for $400 an acre, you're probably doing yourself a favor and the community a favor.
Now this is a very dynamic topic. Let's keep going. Now tomorrow we're going to spend a lot of time in the panel with Josh and Kelly and some other folks on carbon insets and offsets. Clay, what's a carbon inset or offset? What is that?
Well, for quite a while, it's been a little bit of the Wild West.
Yeah.
And, you know, some would say it's settled down and we found our winners and losers. Altogether, it's another opportunity that there's corporate industry who's made goals for 2030, 2035 that they want to be more net zero emissions, more carbon, you know, friendly, and they're willing to buy these credits. It's, you know, in some areas it's a minuscule amount of U.S. farmers. I'd say sub 10% would catch the most of them that have made the decision to change practices, make additionalities to the way they commonly farm today, and as an output have been eligible to earn by corresponding whatever company they participated with a carbon credit. And you know, the path to get there is clear. The obstacles in the way to get there are certainly many. Tremendous opportunity. It is not a one-size-fits-all, nor is EQIP, nor is 45Z, but there's different ways in different markets that a carbon offset, a carbon inset program has certainly proven to be valuable in most people's communities. In some people's areas, it's just not a factor because they're unwilling to change, or they don't believe that they want to make all those investments or practice changes.
You know, there's a saying that the people that got rich in the gold rush were the people that sold the axes and the shovels. And that's why we want to align products to practices. We're not sure how the carbon market's going to work, what the value of carbon. Bloomberg says it's going to be huge. But here's where, just to summarize, our belief system is you're going to have to aggregate data if you create more bushels for less, and if you can take a tillage pass out, stabilize nitrogen, reduce a bit of your P's and K's, be more efficient with nitrogen. Well, any of these things we just talked about, you're going to put yourself in position. So our message today is think about it for your business and your family and start to get yourself set up for these opportunities. So we want to start here with some definitions, have a general conversation. Now I'd like to do, and we're going to end this conversation with a CI score calculator estimator we just launched on the Meristem website at no cost. How many people spend $5 an acre to somebody to do a CI score? Anybody here do the Continuum Ag? $5? Nope, nobody. Okay, there's a lot of farmers out here that spent $5 an acre just for a CI estimator. And we're going to talk a little bit about that when we get to the end. So hang with us through this because we're going to end this conversation with a real life example with Big Juicy Peter's farm, or farm like his, and how the CI calculator works when you change practices that can be enabled by the Meristem portfolio. So that's the so what. So now we got a few terms we all understand. Keep asking questions, and we'll keep going through this. So I kind of wanted Verdova to kind of take over here and do a little.
You got a question?
You got a question?
I just said, can I get the final mic, guys?
Yeah. Little introduction from Verdova. Go ahead, Clay.
The big green one. Big green.
Oh, big green. Okay, so the role Verdova plays, we're not another carbon company. We get cornered into that space quite a bit, frankly, because that's where data, in a number of reasons, has been necessary for. And as we've gotten started building Verdova, that's automatically where we found a home because of the necessary evil of having your stuff together, having your records in order, being able to share and convey that information. In the most simplistic form, we improve accessibility and usefulness for all this farm data that we've been collecting for however long we've had something other than a throttle and a shifter and a combine or a tractor or whatever. You know, there's been various forms over the years, SMS, Ag Leader, Field View, Op Center, and still plenty of people keep their data in a filing cabinet in a shoebox. We see a lot of opportunity to help growers collect, refine, and ultimately deliver whatever form or fashion their data lives in today to the stakeholders that want it, not just for CI, not just for carbon credit program, but think about all the things in our consumer daily lives, how data drives our decisions, how data influences what we do, our purchase history, et cetera. So we're focused as Verdova to figure out how to better identify use cases, to aggregate and network stakeholders and data to more viable end uses long term. So we started just a few years ago. We're another one of these startup companies, you know, like Meristem used to be, and we're a pretty small, agile team, and a couple of growers and a couple of data guys got together and decided it was time we do something other than hold our ag data so close to our vest that nobody got value out of it, arguably maybe other than the operation itself. But we've really grown out of a network effect. We've not gone out and raised a bunch of money from East Coast or West Coast. We don't really have aspirations to do so. We want to continue to stay core to our roots and who we are and be a on-farm data delivery partner to growers that still have control over their data. That's paramount. So we've been able to do that through the network effect. We've somewhere between 5 and 6 million acres. It changes daily. But we do have a number of states and a number of crops, and we're not trying to boil the ocean. We're trying to tackle corn and beans in the heart of where we started and make sure that we can do it. And then when we have opportunities in milo or sorghum or further opportunities in wheat, et cetera, we'll continue to get in these other crops because it's all about the data that people use in their operations to collect the data that goes into raising those crops. So really the current state, or I would call it, I like to say the historic state, where we've been able to already find all these data sources that are out there, are commonly used in operations, all the growers in between, and ultimately all the end delivery points or the stakeholders for where a grain or where a practice or where something ends up in some essence of a value chain for somebody. And this is retail to carbon companies, to companies like Meristem, to things that probably don't have anything to do with ag in our day-to-day lives, but are very ingrained in ag in our day-to-day lives without us knowing it. All have a thirst for data. You know, what we ultimately bring is efficiency and effectiveness for that farm operation with data, and it doesn't have to be pristine data. It needs to maybe start living outside the shoebox or filing cabinet to be, you know, to get wheels underneath of it and push it down the road. But at the end of the day, we offer that kind of unified solution for everybody to come in, find an opportunity, maybe learn something from your own data, and then growers still have control over where their data goes, which pieces and parts of their data is shared. It's not an all or nothing. If we just need certain layers of data that are required to participate in Trevin's carbon intensity program, that's what we share. We don't share anything to do with any top secrets going on in that operation. It's just the required levels. But we kind of become that main conduit of plumbing, if you will, to connect to Mr. Plum's analogy. When he finally got indoor plumbing, it made the pipe a little bit longer than the walk he used to have to make out to the outhouse. You know,
now, Clay, let me ask, Peter, you got a lot of farms and data, right?
Right.
So where do you keep your data today? Where's it at?
In the cloud.
So
On paper, in the cloud.
So the way I understand what I just heard is everybody in here has something, but you've got to get down to the granular of exactly what's applied on every acre, every field, with a lot more definition and clarity. Is that what we're talking about?
Yes.
So if you were to go to Peter, how would you onboard somebody like Peter? How would that work? Like day to day, like down in the weeds, it's just for a minute. Peter's got climate, ops center, different farms, different partners he farms with. Some of it's all over the place. Some of it says Grandma's North 40 herbicide on the 12th.
Yeah.
How do you get that into something that would be certifiable? How does that happen?
I would say if it was an easy solution, we would have had a better one 15 years ago when ag data started really being collected. And it's not easy, and we don't proclaim that we've got the most shiny, polished version of simplicity out there. But we believe we've been able to take a major step forward to make it more feasible for you as a still actively involved but not maybe daily farm operation. You know, Peter, I mean, if somebody's cloud connected, that doesn't mean their data is bulletproof and clean. If somebody's filing cabinet, that doesn't mean they're out of the hunt. It's all about the appetite and the willingness for a grower to put a little lean into it and let us help deliver the hard part, and that's actually pulling it all together.
So if this is a space, if this is a place that seems complex, I'll go back to doing my taxes. So when I do my taxes,
I bet that's
it's
interesting.
a little bit of a train wreck. I mean, you know, I got copies of checks that I wrote to ag input suppliers. You know, I got receipts, and I got a shoebox, and I got a filing cabinet, and some of it's on a computer, and some of it's on a disk. In a perfect world, I'm sure my taxman would love it if I served it to him in a nice thumb drive out of a program that he could just upload, and everything was great. But that's not the case all the time.
Got another question
Oh.
here.
So, Mike, go ahead.
I didn't know. I thought you were at a break. I'm sorry.
So your business, basically, long story short, all our information's in JD Operations Center, okay?
Okay.
We started putting all the information in to go ag, and it took hours and hours and hours of data entry. So your business is you take my information, refine it, and put it into these companies. Do you choose what you go after to get us money, or do we do that together? How does that work? We give you access to our information. Do you take that refined information and go to all these, or what we choose?
Great question. I would say what we've found the most benefit from is leveraging our network. We've found a lot of opportunities because growers like maybe yourself who have a partner at an ethanol plant, who have somebody they're delivering corn to a CPG, who's asking these questions about their data. That's how we've kind of happened across. We're not, you know, actively talking to the Nestle's and PepsiCo's of the world. There's plenty of people doing that. What we're focused on is a relationship with you, understanding what your data is, if it's fit for use. Fit for use is a key term. Having a bunch of data that's not fit for use still means a Peter taxed example, right? But our role and our goal is to go help identify stakeholders who need it and find all the systems it lives in. Maybe it is all on OpCenter, and that's wonderful. What we also do is add a lot of depth and breadth to your data that maybe otherwise doesn't exist off of those farm management systems or off of the filing cabinet to make it fit for use in whatever that application is. All of that is where, you know, I would say, and I'll talk about it, we're fairly efficient at that, proficient in that. We use a lot of smart folks to get that done. We're just not pulling it out and repurposing it with a Verdova label on it because then it's still maybe not fit for use. But we identify a lot of partners through our network. We identify a lot of partnerships through opportunities that we've learned, and a handful of our stakeholders who said, you know what, you should go talk to X, Y, or Z because I think they might be able to have your help.
Fit for use. Go a little deeper. What's fit for use mean? You lost me.
Well, you know, it's something other than I planted corn as my hybrid in 24, and that's what you put in your monitor, and you got 210 bushel. It's needing a breakdown of all synthetic fertilizer used by type, kind, place, time, which fields it went on. It's what did you do, and how did you really raise that crop to whatever the stakeholder desires. Some are very high level in what
Bless you.
scared me.
Scared me.
Thought the stage was falling down. It really boils down to ultimately what's requested or what's required. Right now, we're barely scratching the surface. You know, our family, a lot of our growers who are in Verdova participate in deals, and it's a fair amount of sitting behind the screen doing this, filling out a paperwork, signing off as a grower on things that talk about their data but not utilize their data. And we're in the process of making that data usable, and that's the fit for use to whatever degree that they want granularity or specificity.
Now, when we have Trevin come up and introduce Marquis, maybe you can talk about this a little bit too.
Yeah.
And what you think fit for use is. That might be helpful.
Yeah.
But back to your question, Eric, where Verdova would play a role is not finding a market for you. What they will do is certify your bushels. So if you want to go market bushels into 45Z at your local ethanol plant, you're going to need those bushels audited or certified by data. What Verdova will do is they'll collect your data, they'll certify your bushels. So think of it like this. You'll have a certified 45Z from Verdova. You'll take that into the ethanol plant. That's certified grain is what releases the money to you. So without the certified grain, you can't play. So they're not in the business of aggregating carbon, they're in the business of certifying your bushels. And then once the bushels are certified, you can go find your own opportunities.
And we hopefully can help expand the network of people who want more data that's fit for use for whatever their application is.
Go ahead, question.
So with the idea that you're not aggregating to sell the credits yourself, when someone enters the data into the system, is it a cloud-based system that where does the ultimate ownership of the data lie? Does it retain with the farmer, or do you have some right to that data over the course of time?
It's a great question. Andy Jinks, one of our founders, says, you know, we've talked, the group of equity stakeholders in Verdova, mainly farmers, heard for years that we're not going to sell your data. We have your data, but we're not going to sell it. Don't worry, it's safe. We came out and we intentionally say we're going to sell your data, and you're going to be in control of your data when you choose to sell it. At the end of the day, we help you get your data together. We give you the autonomy to make a decision to do nothing with it, maybe leverage it for your own operation use, or say send it out the door to anything and everything where I can get a value for it. Our B2B is largely with people like Marquis. We've had some revenue shares to where money comes back through Verdova, and then we share a high percentage back to the growers. Our model is it's new, it remains nimble, but at the end of the day, our core remains growers are control of their data whenever they deem ready to use it or want to use it, if we can originate deals that provide value.
Okay, you want to continue with your introduction?
Separate things there.
Yeah,
I
go
heard
ahead.
you're a certifier, and I heard you're an aggregator. So I may need a little bit of clarification there, please.
Yeah. So our verification of data is when there's a need like carbon intensity, and there's all these requirements that a producer's got to oblige to be part of a carbon intensity project. We ultimately get into a grower's operation system, filing cabinet or most events cloud system, verify what's there, have that interaction, both hybrid, automated, and human interaction with what those practices were, make sure we've got all the components that made up whatever that output was. That's the verification we provide. Then ultimately we deliver that to Marquis in this example as a specific need for specific bushel that was needed for your operation to participate in their ability to extract a tax credit.
And to add to that, if you want to participate, for example, in the Marquis's program, you would have a contract with us and us with you, right? We wouldn't contract with Verdova to get your data. It would be you signing up with us to say, yep, I want to be a part of this, and you as the owner of your data would be the one agreeing to be a part of a carbon intensity program with us.
Now
you would decide.
one of the reasons you all want to stay for tomorrow is you're going to have a different view of this on the panel tomorrow. It's going to be a business that certifies and does this on their own for a carbon program. You're going to have farmers that are doing Truterra and Indigo tomorrow. So you'll have a different, there's this 45Z view and this view, and tomorrow we're going to give you a whole different view. Because somebody said Wild West. So just stay with us here as we pull this thing out through the next couple days. There's some perspectives you'll hear tomorrow where they've went ahead and aggregated data on behalf of their customers. They found a market, and they've matched them together, and they have a lot of opportunity. Some people, different ways to look at it, different programs that are available. So we're trying to get both perspectives here and provide as much information as we can. Yep. Continue there if you would, please.
So to your point, our mission is to turn data into dollars for growers, and we believe keeping the grower in control, making the efficiency of the time it takes a farm operation to get their data together, understanding performance in the operation. A lot of these are internal things that we provide to growers that are part of Verdova. At the end of the day, when growers provide us data, our mission is to help turn their data into dollars at their disposal whenever they choose proper and fit. A little bit about the efficiency, and I'll kind of roll through these, but if Trevin and Marquis wanted to go at it alone in the carbon intensity space, and what, Trevin, 1,000+ operations?
Yep.
And multiple elevators you guys pull from, Can you imagine the undertaking that takes to get all those cats herded, as my dad used to like to say? That's what it could look like on the left, what it looks like on the right. We bring a lot of efficiency to that. We bring a lot of enablement to that, and hopefully simplicity for everybody involved. Let us pick up that burden. What we've seen and kind of the chart on the left would present was we've got grower segments. Those who have top tier operations center do every application that they can do, maybe have a close connection to aerial applicators, drone applicators to get all those as applied maps. Tier E would represent the offset of that, to where somebody's largely running maybe older equipment, using very little software and a lot of filing cabinets. And there's all along those spectrums. We see the typical kind of bell curve of people that are out there that have what type of data. You know, this is where we see a lot of people boast, well, I've got really great data. You're still a tier B. You do have great data, but you still have a lot of data that lives elsewhere. And we can go help you get that elsewhere data from an ag retailer, from a neighbor who helped come in and help harvest, or whatever the situation is. But it all takes time. And we're about trying to drive efficiency in that time. We like to think the first time out of the gate, we're at least 5 times faster. What we naturally see is we don't bring the guy from a filing cabinet to a tier A and make them the most advanced Op Center user, but we increase efficiencies, because at the end of the day, when we're living in all this data, and I go back to a number of examples, our founder, Andy Jinks, him and his brother Tom, they had Tom's mix for post beans. That's great. Tom knew what that was. Andy probably had an idea what it was. When that data was necessary, nobody understood that tank mix. Nobody understood what was in there, let alone the time or the field it might have went on, other than what the machine captured. So we ultimately create product translation tables. It's kind of like a decoder ring to say what this post application was, which products were in it, when they were applied, how they were applied, which rates they were applied. We can break that down and bring it to value. Same with seed, same with technology, same with nitrogen, same with fertility. And there's a lot of places in these traditional farm management systems like John Deere Op Center and Climate Field View, they don't have lines. So if you wanted to use a planter box treatment, there's not a line for planter box treatment in John Deere operations. There's not a line for tillage in Field View. Those are all things that we have to add depth and breadth to the data that we're bringing over, even from the most advanced Tier A user, certainly down to the Tier E user. But again, our role in that is we make it more proficient year over year, because we're already living in your data system. We understand what your nomenclature is for fields. We understand how the boundaries have been 12 boundaries in a 40-acre field in 5 different years, because every application created a new boundary, whatever the situation was. So there's a lot of what I call high-level things we clean up. There's a lot of depth and breadth of the true refinement in the word. We're really refining and making the data fit for use in many cases, if not over ready for use. You know, so highest level, you know, we think we bring a lot of, you know, proficiency to the table. We eliminate all redundancy and burden that commonly exists with having to get my data together, you know, maybe not for the tax man, but maybe for the CI man, or maybe to go taking advantage of an opportunity in my local area, or, you know, however I'm connected to the supply chain. From stakeholders, you know, and Trevin can better speak to this, we increase scale, we increase, you know, the accessibility, and ultimately their usefulness or their needs to have data that's fit for use.
Okay, now we're 21 minutes in. We gotta keep you moving. I'm gonna give you the. Oh, you're done.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Austin, give me a clicker. Thank you, buddy. Trying to keep this pretty casual, if you can't tell. Any more questions for Verdova? Great questions. Questions from any panelists? What do you got? What do you got for me?
So Clay, I think what I'm hearing is, just to summarize some of that, is no matter the operating system that I use. So if I'm John Deere Ops, or I'm operating an International or a New Holland or whatever color I'm operating, depending on their operating system, I've got data stored in that operating system. I've got an ag retailer that's doing applications for me. I don't have those in that operating system. Those are sitting there, you know, at that ag retailer. They've got record of it. What I think I'm hearing is where I can go to Verdova and say, here's all that stuff, right? And you can take all that stuff and turn it into something that makes sense for my opportunity that may exist within the 45Z market.
Yeah, I mean, we welcome the opportunity for complexity, because we hopefully simplify what otherwise is a very complex ask to go track down, find, make the calls, make the connection with those ag retailer systems, glean whatever we need to out of the filing cabinet. I did mention earlier, we don't care about what you paid for product. We don't care about anything other than pounds, ounces, and gallons that were used on an acre, where it was used, how it was used, and why it was used, and ultimately hopefully deliver that for you.
Very
Got
good.
a question
Yeah.
back here.
Another one here? One back here. Let's go back here real quick. He's got the mic. Yeah.
I understand the process you're talking about with cleaning up data a little bit, but I was curious the legality behind the certification process that you're talking about. You said that you're certifying the grain to be able to sell it. Is there a way, hypothetically, if you were an op center power user, that tier A scenario, for the farmer to certify themselves and then sell that? And then second part of that question, does that lower the ethanol's actual CI score because it's an inset at that point by using better grain from the farmer?
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's just use an example. You're going to require something about the data on the farm.
Yeah.
Why don't you answer that first part, and then we'll hit your second.
Yep. Yeah, very good. I think, for one, we're still waiting for all these rules to come out as like exactly how it's going to go. But to Clay's point, for us buying from 1,000 growers across, a 60 or 70, 80 mile radius around us, we need kind of a referee to tell us like, this is the standard way that we're going to aggregate data, provide the CI score, and that's where we find Verdova valuable, rather than trying to talk with 1,000 or 2,000 farmers and say, well, how do you get your CI score? It's a little different than your neighbor. It's a little different than the county, the guy 2 counties away. So I think for this point, having Verdova kind of be that standard way of collecting the data and providing the CI score, that's valuable for the ethanol plant, who will have to be the one facing the IRS on this, rather than going to different farmers and say, well, he used a yield map, but he used his actual grain ticket, you know what I mean? So it kind of provides a standard to how it's being quantified to ensure that when we have to face the IRS, we know it's robust enough to claim a tax credit on that.
Is there a legal requirement?
Again, we're waiting on guidance, but they've alluded to having a third-party verifier to come and check and make sure that these things are legitimate. Yep.
I love the questions, but here's what I'd like to do, because I think some of this, we want to do this in the context of one example because of the complexity of all the different variables. Because there's about 1 million different ways you can cut this thing. There's companies doing climate smart grants and handing money out to farmers for just going to strip till. So I'm afraid this is a continuum of gray right now. So let's get one example from an ethanol plant, and then we'll come back to you if we could. We've got 17 minutes on our part, and I want to be fair to our other breakout folks. I'm not supposed to go over there. Go ahead.
So walk through this.
Yeah, go, big dog.
Yeah, very good. I'll be pretty brief on just kind of our background or who we are. Like I said, we're the world's largest dry mill ethanol plant, single location in Hennepin, Illinois. Dry mill just means like a relatively newer facility that was built after the RFS. So in the 2000s and beyond is usually dry mill. You can kind of tell it's really 2 plants. You can kind of see the kind of mirror images there. The one to the north to the right was built in 2008. And we added the south unit in 2016. Both are nameplate 100 million gallon plants that we doubled the size of within each one. So those are 2 100 million gallon plants producing 400 million gallons a year. You can kind of see in the background maybe that's the Illinois River. So we are located on the Illinois River, so we do a lot of exports of our DDGs and ethanol, which has given us a good start to this whole carbon intensity world, which I'll get into that in a second. A brief background, we were farmers. Marcos' family was farmers. In 1975, they bought a grain truck, started hauling corn for their neighbors, and called it Marcos Grain. They started buying some inputs and providing some agronomy services to the same farmers in the 70s and into the 90s. Then they started trading fertilizer on the Illinois River. So come the RFS, come the kind of the dawn of the ethanol age, they're like, well, we've got a spot on the Illinois River. We know barge freight. There aren't a ton of competing ethanol plants around us in Illinois like there are in Iowa that are being built. I think this could work. So that's kind of the story of how Marquis got here, and there are still 6 Marquis family members that come to work every day and work harder than anybody. It's a great culture, great team to be a part of. Since then, looking at 2018 and beyond, we have started to do our own direct to customer. So everything we ship internationally, it's not through a trader, it's not through a broker. Mark Marquis flew there himself, shook the guy's hand, and said, "If you got a problem, call me." So that's something unique that just right there in Illinois, we've got international access across the board. I want to show some of the projects we're working on, not just to talk about Marquis, but to show kind of what some of these low carbon potential opportunities are for the ethanol plant to participate in. First and foremost is our carbon capture and sequestration well. In this picture, you can hardly really tell, but that's at our plant. We're not on a pipeline. We have, thankfully, by the grace of God, we have the right geology underneath us to have the ability to capture carbon right on our site, on property that we own. So that's when I talk about a large investment to lower carbon capture, it is a very large investment, but we think it's one worth making given the future of carbon intensity is going to be focused on given the future of ethanol and biofuels is focused on carbon intensity. Like I said, SAF is focused on carbon intensity. It doesn't necessarily care that it's from corn or that it's from soybeans or canola or whatever. It's all about carbon intensity. So that's why we're investing in projects like that. The combined heat and power will do the same thing. We'll generate our own electricity from our own nat gas. In 2025, we'll also be capturing the carbon from our flue gas, from our steam. We plan to have a soy crush facility that'll start in 2026 or into 2027. So we'll also be grinding beans there as well. And looking into 2028, we'll have a sustainable aviation fuel plant that we're in projects with right now with LanzaJet.
Big family investment.
Yeah, it's all
family.
It's all family. Here's just a rough idea of kind of where we draw from. Again, we procure about 130 million bushels of corn a year, which comes from about 650,000 acres. Our bean plant will be grinding almost double the amount of acres. We'll need about 1.2 million acres of beans for a bean plant. So even though if you're not in this radius now, maybe that will probably grow once we start needing beans. I want to give a little background on where we see the ethanol industry going. So right now today, this is the typical ethanol plant, right? We bring in corn and we make ethanol, DDG, and corn oil, and through fermentation we have clean CO2, which didn't really matter up until like a couple years ago. But ever since the dawn of the ethanol industry, this is where we've been. But let's compare that to like the crude industry, the oil industry, right? If you look at a barrel of crude, there's about 20 different products that come out of each barrel of crude. Every single component of that is utilized. So making 4 products out of ethanol competing against 20 in a barrel of crude we're automatically at a disadvantage, right? So how do we differentiate ourselves? How do we grow the ag industry, grow the corn ethanol industry? And that's through a lot of these products today. Kind of like, was it Mitch's chemistry score up there? Mine wasn't great, but let's entertain the chemistry idea for a little bit. Ethanol is a pretty simple compound, right? There's nothing too crazy going on there. And we can turn ethanol to ethylene extremely easily, right? You kind of look at it, they're similar, there's some carbons, there's maybe a couple more hydrogens and an oxygen on ethanol, but what do? You take ethanol, break a carbon bond to get ethylene, and you have water, right? It's not a toxic chemical. You're making ethylene and water. And you say, well, why do you care about ethylene? Ethylene is like the most basic hydrocarbon you can have. And a hydrocarbon is just basically the building block for either life or energy. And in this case, ethylene is kind of the building block for almost all those products you see around it. From ethylene, you can make bioplastics or chemicals, or you can make SAF, you can make renewable diesel. So you can go from ethanol to ethylene in a pretty scientifically non-cumbersome process, make water, and have the capabilities to do a lot of different things there. So I just want to show kind of the capabilities of ethanol in the industry. Yes, we're facing EVs. And yes, we're facing some obstacles. But in a world that cares about carbon, what better story is there that corn grabs carbon out of the air? We produce chemicals or fuel or even T-shirts or shoes out of some of this stuff, and we can capture that carbon in the earth permanently. I mean, it's one of the most sustainable stories out there known to man at the cheapest value, at the cheapest cost to do so. That's something we're excited about from a carbon standpoint. And then the last kind of point that I'll drive home is, I've already said a lot of these statements about 45Z, but earlier I mentioned we're on the river, right? We do a lot of exports, and since we do exports, my job has mainly been to stay compliant in the European market, and the Japanese market, and the Canadian market, and the Colombian market. It's not just 45Z that cares about CI. We've been having to get our CI score since 2010 to comply with Europe. Where the difference comes in now is now farmers are starting to have a chance to play into that CI. We've kind of had to take a default number for corn because there's no value there for the growers. Well, now they're starting to come into play with Z and with the Canadian program and some other programs that there's starting to get to be value there for the growers that will allow us to look at corn for our CI. So that's just a little bit about Marquis, but in general, just wanted to kind of share some of the opportunities in the industry and beyond, just not even our plant or just 45Z. But that's all I had for slides.
Oh, I really, really appreciate having an ethanol producer perspective. That was really insightful. Maybe time for one question for Marquis, our friend Trevin. Got one? Anybody? We can get to the end. Right there, Guth.
So what's to stop like big farmers funneling it all and being a race to the bottom in like 5 years? Because the more you can keep, the better it's in your pocket, right? So, and if a large farmer, so let's just say you got one farmer's packing up 10 million bushels. It's more advantageous to you, just like him. You want all your stuff to go through him because it makes your life easier. Then the next step is getting the big farmer, and then he gets to cut out everybody else too.
Yeah, I think there's a few ways to look at that. For one, when you grind 130 million bushels, we can't be selective, right? We need to keep buying from the same people we've been buying from. And two, that right now this is a 3-year program, and that it's going to take some time for things to mature and for this market to really get sorted out. So I think if it stops after 3 years, there really won't be a whole lot of time for the maturation to happen. And having your CI, being an early adopter of the CI score means you're going to have more opportunity. But if you're not adopting the CI score, then you won't have that time to get to maturation. Now let's go down the avenue of it gets extended. If it gets extended and the market can sort itself out, well, suddenly now the plants that weren't able to participate before, right? Because I said most are 55. Suddenly, if there's a longer runway, well, then plants have the time to invest. They have time to get below 50. In a 3-year program, it's tough to invest today and get below 50 by 2027. But if this gets extended and there's more sophistication on the market, well, suddenly the ethanol plants can invest in things to get them below 50, and we do feel that there will be, ethanol goes to 40% of, corn goes to 40% of all corn grown in the U.S. goes to ethanol, right? So there's going to be a lot of markets and a lot of opportunities if it gets extended and ethanol plants can get below 50.
Go ahead.
So how do you separate it? You're buying 130 million bushels of corn. How do you separate to know, like, not all 130 million bushels are going to have a score?
Yeah, this could get in the weeds, but we do this for our European program, but the simple answer is grain accounting, right? We don't need to do IP or segregation to know you delivered your local elevator 100,000 bushels and your neighbor delivered 200,000 bushels. grain accounting can show who brought in how many bushels, and then you just tag a CI onto that and kind of say, well, going down the list, let's use the best CI first, right? And that's what we're telling the USDA. And last week, the USDA had an RFI, a request for information due, and that's exactly what we're telling the USDA is don't do IP. It's not necessary. It's all number 2 yellow corn. Let's just use already used grain accounting to keep track of bushels and share that through the supply chain.
We got 5 minutes left. I want to cover a couple other things. Farm-specific CI score generated by Verdova. Talk to me, Clay.
Real quick, because we're able to gather all that information at each field level, we present an operation average as a result of having all the data in Verdova to create a CI-generated score that's relatively simple for most growers to do. This is an area of the map. We've currently been doing ethanol projects for a while to get the early movers ready. We're still all waiting on rules to finalize, but if you've got opportunities in northern Iowa, southern Minnesota, South Dakota, northern Illinois, we can turn full circle the impact of Meristem's products into a lower CI, and we'll get ready to talk about that.
So Meristem's trying to be Switzerland on which one of these programs you want to be in or what practices you want to do. But we definitely want to start to build alignment with folks like Josh, folks like these folks, other people that are leading out here. So here's these dots on the map show places where there could be opportunity.
Your dealers and opportunities, because we've got a partnership at an ethanol facility who's willing to work with us and work with their local community to bring CI in and create value for their operations.
So Mitch, if we had a dealer aligned with those opportunities and they took out a tillage pass, we could lower a CI score.
That's correct.
Let's look at that example. Everybody take a QR code of that if you'd like.
So what this is, you'll find the GREET model if you want to do an exhaustive Google search to find the GREET, G-R-E-E-T, Department of Treasury, Argonne National Labs score. Or you can go buy one for $7 from somebody else or whatever the case is. This is really the first industry intuitive, easy to use to get some idea about what your operation score is. That's what most of these plants are trying to determine from their supply sheds, where they have to go find 130 million bushels of corn. This is a great way to get an idea versus go onto a website and make sure you get everything filled out and then leave with a website result for an operation average that may not mean anything to producer. The next step in this is to where you could integrate your data into Verdova. We don't charge growers. We have no hurdles for growers to join Verdova. It's free. And you can get your individualized CI score. Earlier, there was a big long graph that represented field actual scores that we give operation averages. If you scan the QR code, it goes to Meristem's page, is where this estimator
We're launching.
is.
It's live now on the Meristem site. It's absolutely no cost to go through the calculator, the estimator. We're not charging anybody $5 an acre.
So Eric,
We're not collecting your data to do it.
I was just going to say, so if you want to go on our website right now and you want to put in your practices, you can get an estimated CI score, and it's not going to cost you a dime.
Can you make that movie go, Michaela? Hit the button. Hit the button, Rob. Okay, I'm not touching anything. So this is the website. Hopefully we can make it go. Yep, so we did an example here. Clay, you and I worked on this yesterday morning. We picked McLean County, Illinois. We are, it's a good county. We put in the amount of the production. We put 240 bushels of corn, probably a crop failure for McLean County. Moisture content comes down. We pick conventional tillage, no cover crop, no manure. We came over here and we put in, we're going to do the 4R. We plugged in the fertility program next. We bumped that nitrogen up. You have some anhydrous ammonia in there.
So what Rob's doing now is if you're on the calculator, you can plug your operation into this calculator real time.
So that gives you an estimate of 24.43, Mitchie. So that's the farm that might look something like yours, Juice. So now you come over here and you reduce the tillage.
Trevin, the industry standard for default value for CI score corn is
29.
29.
kilograms. Yep.
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 So the idea, depending on how the rules come out, for every point under 29, there could be value, depending on the program. So just the tillage pass took it down a few points. And that's something we really want to focus on.
And each point is worth how much tax credit? 5.5 cents. You don't get 5.5, but that's the value of each point. You're going to get about 2.5 cents, give or take,
Look here.
for every point of reduction you do.
So that, when you put in the cover crop, we went in and went to no-till and cover crop, and we went to some reduction, a little bit reduction of P. We're not sitting here taking it all out, and we actually think our dealers can still do very well. So when you did all these practices that align to this model, we actually went down to a 4.82. Now, that's just an estimate, right? What's it mean? It means you probably need to work with a partner of some kind, a Verdova or someone else, to go ahead and verify that your practices actually took place and get that data in a set that's fit for use for whoever you're going to work with, which could change. But we heard from Marquis that they're going to look at this score and they're going to look to Verdova for that service. But from our perspective, from Meristem's, what we're trying to do is if you take out a tillage pass and use cover crops, that rang the bell by like 15 points. So let's use excavator AMS to get out there and use that. When we added a nitrogen stabilizer, that rang the bell. When we came down a little bit in P, K, and N, it rang the bell. So we got it all the way down to 4.82. Tomorrow, Kelly Garrett will be on stage, and he'll talk about what, Juice?
Talk about how much he's cashed in on sustainable ag.
And what's his CI scores?
CI score, according to the last time I talked to him, was a -6.
So he is merchandising that, he's branding it, and he's getting his data together, and he's going fast.
And I think the number one takeaway from that, one thing I want to really push as a grower as well, is that none of these practices are being put forward at the detriment of yield. The whole idea here is that we want to drive the yield. So you talk to a guy like Kelly Garrett who's setting yield records. He's not doing these practices at the detriment of yield on his farm. So he's incorporated these practices, or farmers like this are incorporating these practices because of these opportunities. We want to put you in a position to become a more efficient operation, create more profitability on your farm, all while being able to take advantage of these opportunities that are going to be out here, because these are going to be real income streams for the farm.
I want to thank Trevin. Thank you. And I want to thank Clay for your time. Let's give him a round of applause.